There was a time when the classroom was more than just a place to learn. It was a miniature kingdom of order. Every bell, every seat, every word spoken had its rule. And if you broke one, well, the paddle was always watching. Today, we're stepping back into that world, a 1950s American classroom, where discipline, respect, and tradition ruled the day. Some call it the golden age of manners. Others remember it as the age of fear. But one thing's for sure, these old-school rules shaped an entire generation. Rule number 1. The paddle was always watching. Imagine sitting in a wooden desk, your hands folded neatly, eyes on the chalkboard. And just above the teacher's desk, hanging like a shadow of authority, the paddle. It wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol. Teachers called it the board of education. One glance at it could stop even the bravest class clown in his tracks. Corporal punishment was normal, expected even. A slip-up could mean a quick sting on the palm, or worse, the dreaded call home where another round awaited. Parents rarely complained. In fact, they often said, "You must have deserved it." In that era, discipline wasn't just taught, it was felt. A reminder that respect began with fear, and obedience was the first lesson of the day. Rule number 2. Girls must wear dresses. Picture the hallway, polished floors gleaming under the fluorescent lights, a parade of knee-length dresses, crisp collars, and petticoats. In the 1950s, girls didn't choose between pants and skirts. The choice was already made for them. Dresses were mandatory, regardless of weather, comfort, or preference. Even on the coldest mornings, you'd see girls braving the wind, legs bare, trying not to shiver. Trousers were considered improper, unladylike, the rulebook said. And if a girl showed up wearing pants, she'd likely be sent home to dress appropriately. Teachers believed these rules prepared young women for their future roles, graceful, modest, and composed. But for many girls, it meant learning to hide discomfort with a smile. Today, it's easy to forget how much courage it took to challenge something as simple as a dress code. Back then, conformity was expected, and rebellion, even silent, was an act of quiet bravery. Rule number 3. Boys' hair must be short. Before rock and roll shook the world, neatness ruled the classroom. For boys, that meant one thing: short hair, clean shave, and a comb always on standby. If your hair brushed your collar or hid your ears, you were in trouble. Some schools would even send a boy home to get a haircut before he could return. This wasn't just about grooming, it was about identity. Short hair meant respectability, cleanliness, and control. Long hair, that was for rebels, for troublemakers. Teachers and parents alike believed appearance reflected discipline, and in the 1950s, discipline was everything. Before the Beatles made long hair cool, before the counterculture challenged conformity, every boy's haircut was a silent pledge. I will follow the rules. Rule number 4. No talking in class. Raise your hand. Wait to be called on. Speak only when spoken to. These weren't just guidelines, they were gospel. Classrooms were silent sanctuaries where only the teacher's voice echoed. Whisper to a friend, pass a note, or even chuckle at the wrong time, and you'd earn yourself detention, or worse, the blackboard punishment. I will not talk in class, written 100 times, meekly on lined paper. Teachers believed silence built discipline. That order could only exist in quiet. And while that silence might seem stifling now, it taught a generation how to listen, how to wait, and how to endure stillness. Today's classrooms buzz with questions and conversation, but once upon a time, even a whisper could break the sacred calm of learning. Rule number 5. No left-handed writing. For some children, School didn't just mean learning. It meant unlearning who they were. Left-handed students were often forced to switch hands. Teachers tied their left hands to the desk or gently slapped them with rulers until they corrected their grip. Being left-handed was seen as strange, even wrong, a flaw to be fixed. Some teachers thought it symbolized stubbornness. Others called it unclean or improper. It was a small example of a bigger truth. The 1950s classroom valued uniformity over individuality. Every child was molded to fit a single image of perfection. And yet, those quiet rebels who kept their left hand hidden beneath the desk, they remind us that even in the strictest times, the human spirit finds ways to stay true.
Rule number 6. Daily Pledge of Allegiance. The morning bell rings, desks creak, and across the room, every student stands tall, hand over heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag. It was the daily ritual that began every school day in America. Patriotism wasn't optional, it was expected. In the shadow of the Cold War, loyalty to country was sacred. Reciting the pledge reminded every child of unity, duty, and pride, values America clung to tightly in uncertain times. Missing a word, mumbling, or refusing to participate could earn a stern talk or even a call home. To a 1950s student, the flag was more than fabric. It was a daily oath, a promise to stand tall, obey, and belong. Rule number 7. Morning classroom prayer. After the pledge came prayer. Hands clasped, heads bowed, voices low. Across classrooms, students recited verses or offered silent thanks before lessons began. It was seen as a way to start the day with gratitude, humility, and good character. Few questioned it. In small towns, it felt as natural as the rising sun. But as the decades rolled on, the world began to change, and so did the boundaries between church and school. Yet for those who grew up in the 1950s, that moment of morning stillness, the hush before the day began, remains a memory etched in time. Rule number 8. No gum allowed.
In a 1950s classroom, chewing gum wasn't just rude, it was rebellion. If a teacher spotted a moving jaw or heard the dreaded pop, you could expect one of 3 fates. Your gum thrown in the trash, your name on the board, or the ultimate punishment, cleaning gum off desks after school. Teachers saw gum as messy, distracting, and disrespectful. For students, it was a guilty pleasure, a tiny act of defiance. Funny how something so small could feel so daring. No phones, no texting. Just one secret stick of Wrigley's could make you feel like a rebel. Rule number 9. Silent lunchrooms. The lunch bell rings, trays clatter, and yet, silence. Many schools enforced quiet lunch periods. Talking, laughing, even whispering could earn you a warning. Some believed eating in silence taught discipline. Others thought it prevented mischief. For some kids, those quiet meals felt peaceful. For others, it was a test of endurance, a half hour of staring at your sandwich, waiting for recess. But when the bell finally rang, that first burst of laughter outside felt like freedom itself.
Rule number 10. Gender-separated classes. In the 1950s, even learning had a gender. Boys filed into shop class, hammering, sawing, building birdhouses. Girls went to home economics, sewing aprons, baking pies, practicing household skills. It wasn't just about education. It was about preparing each child for their proper place in society. The idea was simple. Boys would build the world, and girls would make it beautiful. Today, it sounds old-fashioned, even unfair. But back then, it was simply the way things were. And yet, behind every rule, there were dreamers. Girls who wanted to build, and boys who wanted to bake. Even then, the seeds of change were quietly being planted. Rule number 11: strict attendance policies. Missing school wasn't just frowned upon, it was nearly a crime against duty. A single unexcused absence could send a note home, or worse, summon your parents for a discussion. Attendance records were sacred scrolls, neatly kept in the teacher's gradebook. Perfect attendance certificates weren't just awards, they were badges of honor, a symbol of reliability, of pride. Children learned early that commitment mattered, that showing up, no matter what, was part of being a good citizen. No wonder so many adults from that era still brag, "I never missed a single day of school." It wasn't just memory, it was identity. Rule number 12: perfect handwriting required. In every desk drawer, beside the inkwell and eraser, sat a pad of lined paper, the stage for one of education's most delicate arts, penmanship. Students practiced cursive daily, tracing each loop and curve with near sacred precision. "Your handwriting is your character," teachers would say. Sloppy letters? That wasn't just bad form. It was seen as laziness, even disrespect. Report cards carried neatness grades, and competitions for best penmanship filled bulletin boards. That rhythmic glide of ink across the page taught patience, focus, and pride. In an age before keyboards, a beautiful signature was your calling card, your proof of diligence. Even now, when we type more than we write, those who lived through that era still treasure the curve of a perfect capital S. Rule number 13: row seating only. Rows upon rows, desks straight as soldiers, all facing forward. In the 1950s, classrooms weren't places for collaboration. They were temples of attention. Every child faced the blackboard and the teacher, the single source of truth. No circles, no group tables, no team learning. It was about structure, symmetry, and control. Teachers could survey the room in a single glance, spotting every slouch, every whisper, every wandering gaze. This seating style wasn't just about order, it was a visual metaphor for society itself. Everyone in their place, everyone facing the same direction. And while today's classrooms thrive on movement and discussion, there's something hauntingly poetic about those perfect rows, like a portrait of a time that valued obedience above all. Rule number 14: teacher's authority, untouchable. To question a teacher was to question order itself. In that era, the teacher's word was final, carved in chalk and backed by the paddle. There were no debates, no backtalk, no "my parents said." Teachers ruled the classroom like captains of a ship, steering every student toward discipline and knowledge. If a child dared argue, the outcome was swift: a scolding, detention, or a trip to the principal. And when you got home, parents sided with the teacher, not the child. That respect for authority created an atmosphere of reverence, and sometimes fear. But for all its rigidity, it also forged deep admiration. Many from that generation still remember their teachers with awe, not just as educators, but as moral guides, pillars of their community. Rule number 15: uniform shoes. In the 1950s, even your shoes told a story.
Most schools required polished black or brown Oxfords, sturdy, clean and simple. No sneakers, no flashy colors, no casual wear. Shoes had to shine, and some schools even inspected them. Dust, scuffs, or worn laces meant a note sent home, or a quick polish before class. Why so much fuss over footwear? Because it wasn't just about shoes, it was about self-respect. Every polished toe reflected discipline, neatness, and pride in one's appearance. A lesson that many carried long after graduation, that how you present yourself to the world matters.
Rule number 16. No running in hallways. The hallway, long, echoing, lined with lockers and rules. You could walk, you could whisper, but if you ran, you'd hear it. No running in the halls! Every school had that one teacher who enforced it like a general. One sprint to beat the bell could earn you a stern lecture or lines to write after class. It wasn't just about safety, it was about dignity. Orderly movement, quiet transitions, calm between chaos. The hallways were extensions of discipline, the arteries of a school that pulsed with silent control. Rule number 17. Line up single file. Before lunch, before recess, before assemblies, every student lined up. Single file, straight, silent. Teachers stood at the door, scanning for fidgeting or chatter. No pushing, no skipping, no talking. It may seem trivial, but those moments of order taught patience, restraint, and respect for others' space. In a world that prized coordination and discipline, even standing in line was a life lesson, an early exercise in waiting your turn. Today it might look strict, but to those kids, it was just the rhythm of the day, as natural as the ringing of the bell. Rule number 18. No passing notes. Before phones and DMs, there was the ancient art of the folded note. Tiny secrets scribbled in pencil. Meet me at recess. Do you like me? Check yes or no. But if a teacher caught you passing one, game over. The note would be confiscated, sometimes even read aloud to the entire class, to everyone's horror and delight. Passing notes wasn't just about words, it was about connection. In a world of silence and strictness, it was rebellion in miniature. Teachers saw distraction, but kids, they saw magic, a whisper of freedom slipped across polished desks when no one was looking. Rule number 19. Daily dress inspections. Before the first bell rang, students often faced a morning ritual that felt half military, half ceremonial. The daily dress inspection. Shirts tucked in, collars crisp, hair combed, shoes polished. Teachers scanned the room like commanders on parade, checking every detail. Wrinkled shirt? Quick fix. Dirty fingernails? A note home. It wasn't vanity, it was virtue. Cleanliness meant respect, neatness meant discipline, and even though it might have seemed strict, it taught generations that appearance wasn't just about pride, it was about presence. Because in a world of first impressions, neatness spoke louder than words. Rule number 20. Assigned seats, no switching. In today's world of open seating and group tables, it's easy to forget how fixed things once were. Every child in the 1950s classroom had an assigned seat, a home base, a tiny island in a sea of discipline. Seats were often arranged alphabetically or by height. Once assigned, that was it. No switching, no trading, no exceptions. Sometimes that meant sitting beside your best friend. Other times it meant sharing space with your worst rival for an entire year. It wasn't just about control, it was about consistency. In that seat,
You were expected to learn, to listen, to behave. Those assigned seats became memories, places where first friendships began, where first notes were passed, and where thousands of young minds quietly grew up. Rule number 21. No watches or jewelry. A sparkle on a wrist, a bracelet that jingled, a tiny locket, all forbidden. Jewelry and watches were distractions, teachers said, frivolous adornments that drew eyes away from the blackboard. Some schools even collected them at the start of the day, returning them only when the final bell rang. It wasn't about cruelty, it was about focus. Every rule had a reason: to keep eyes forward, minds sharp, and vanity at bay. Still, for the few who dared wear a secret trinket or a hand-me-down watch, it was a quiet act of self-expression in a world that left little room for individuality. Even in uniformity, the human desire to be seen always found its way through.
Rule number 22. Textbook covers required. If you were a student back then, you remember the ritual. Wrapping each textbook in brown paper, smoothing the corners, folding them just right. Those covers weren't optional, they were required. Books were treasures to be protected like family heirlooms. A torn page or a scribble could lead to a lecture, or worse, paying for a replacement. And yet, those paper covers became canvases of creativity. Kids doodled names, drew tiny rockets, or wrote secret messages beneath the folds. Each book carried not just knowledge, but personality. It was a simple rule that taught responsibility and pride, turning even the plainest textbook into something uniquely yours. Rule number 23. No makeup allowed. In the 1950s classroom, natural wasn't a trend, it was a requirement. Girls were not allowed lipstick, nail polish, or blush. Teachers patrolled the halls with eagle eyes, ready to confiscate a compact or tissue-stained pink. Makeup was seen as grown-up, improper, a symbol of vanity rather than virtue. And yet, that didn't stop quiet rebellion. A touch of tinted lip balm, a hint of polish hidden behind folded hands, small acts of self-expression whispered between friends. It wasn't about glamour, it was about freedom. Because for every rule that restrained, there was always a young heart learning how to push back, gently, bravely, beautifully. Rule number 24. Recess was timed and structured. Recess. That brief breath of freedom between lessons. But even freedom had its rules. Every minute of recess was planned, timed, and supervised. Teachers with stopwatches watched over games, counting down to the bell. No wandering, no roughhousing, and certainly no unsupervised fun. Still, to a child's heart, even 15 minutes under the open sky felt endless. The laughter, the smell of grass, the sound of the bell calling you back inside. Those tiny moments became the sweetest memories of all. Recess wasn't just playtime. It was a reminder that even in a world of structure, joy always finds its way through. Rule number 25. Report cards sent home monthly. At the end of each month came the moment of truth, the report card. A simple envelope that carried the weight of pride, fear, and expectation. Inside, neat cursive letters told your story. Excellent effort, needs improvement, lacks attention. Parents were expected to sign and return it, proof they had read every word. And for many children, that single piece of paper decided whether the month ended in praise or punishment. But beyond the grades, those report cards symbolized something deeper, the bond between home and school. A reminder that education wasn't just a duty, but a partnership built on accountability,
and trust.
The last bell of the 1950s classroom has long since rung. The chalkboards have faded, the paddles have been packed away, and the desks that once stood in rows now gather dust in museums and memories. Yet the lessons remain. Those old school rules, strict, demanding, sometimes unfair, built more than students. They built resilience. They taught manners, patience, and respect. Values that in many ways the modern world still misses. Maybe that's why we look back on them not with bitterness, but with a strange affection. Because behind every rule was a teacher who cared. Behind every lesson, a belief in bettering the next generation. So as we close this journey, take a moment to remember your own school days. The sound of the bell, the smell of chalk, the friends who sat beside you in those perfectly lined rows. And if this trip back in time warmed your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who remembers, and subscribe to The Nostalgia Nest, where we keep the past alive, one memory at a time, because some lessons never really end.